I'm ready when you are. I'm ready when you are.
Learn more. Visit the EPA at epa.gov/radio. That's epa.gov/radio.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Real Estate Plate. As always, I'm your host, Nick Sakalis, coming to you live from the WGBB studios here in Merrick, New York. And as usual, things are getting hectic right now this time of the year. We have a insane influx of activity that's been happening over the past couple of weeks. And I'm going to get into that a little bit today. And I'm also going to give everybody a real understanding of what's going on with buyer and seller sentiment right now. And I think it's going to give everybody a clear view of how to be able to approach this market going into the next few months, because it's official. Selling season has started. Real estate hotbed, we're in it. And it's going to be a wild ride. I'll tell you that much. It's not going to be what everybody is expecting, and it's going to be a lot different from what we usually prepare going into. Now, that being said, wow, I'm barely catching my breath right now. I just got into the studio like a whirlwind. Trevor was playing his replays of me. I don't know which show he was playing, but I'm sure it was something that got cut midstream. And if you wanted to hear what was on the rest of that show, you could always look at one of my replays and you'll be able to hear it. But let me get my bearings straight. Did I say good evening yet?
Sure did.
I did. Okay. So I'm trying to get myself in somewhat order. Because while I'm doing this, I'm getting texts, I'm getting emails from everybody, even though everybody that knows me knows I do the show every Monday, 6 to 7. They always find that hour to want to contact me. So I'm doing the best I can to basically respond to everybody and get it going. So that being said, we got a lot to make up right now. We got a few minutes that we're delayed on, and I am going to give everybody a blow-by-blow of what's happening right now in this real estate market. Okay? As I alluded to a little bit ago, we are officially in the season. This is your season. You go from March until I want to say beginning to mid-July, and that's your hot season of real estate. Truth be said, you kind of know where everything is like flattening out in June, but I give it till mid-July just to give everybody, because right now there's going to be a lot of overhang going in. And the reason for that is you have an enormous amount of people that are purchasing, getting themselves ready for possibly the next school year. And the next school year always starts in September. So they want to be settled, and in their new home and get themselves adjusted to possibly in that real, in the new neighborhood, and they get themselves settled in with the schools and any kind of light reparations and stuff like that they would have to make for their houses to be able to have them done already. So this year was a little different from years in the past. Last year by far was a different kind of a year. It was a special year. That's the best way to be able to put it. It was a special kind of year. It was different. It was filled with a lot of anxiety. it was filled with anxiety for buyers, um, sellers, and of course us real estate professionals that were trying to keep all the pieces going and keeping everything together. What Let me give everybody a little bit of a replay of what happened last year. Last year we were going to January, February. We had uh, kind of plateau, kind of almost like flatlining a little bit. We were kind of in that state where we're kind of leveling out with the real estate, and all of a sudden, boom, the COVID news started hitting harder and harder. We already had indications of, the coronavirus from November, December, but it wasn't really, being hit on hard here in the US until we got into January. And then as we went into February, it started to become like real. People started to say, hold on a second, something's going on over here. And by the time we got into March, it was full blown corona time. We basically, were in a different state of mind. So we had that leveling out market that already, just like every other typical kind of real estate year, when you go into the winter months, you typically have a slowdown. And when you have that slowdown, inventory comes down. Some people take their places off the market, say, okay, we're going to sit through the winter and then we're going to put it back in the spring and that kind of thing. It happens all the time. Some people don't want to be doing showings during holiday season and that kind of thing, so they take it off. Sometimes winter plays a role if it's really cold and a lot of snow is coming down and that kind of thing, which wasn't the case last year. But you typically have that slowdown. So we were already at a lower inventory level than what you normally have in peak season. So that being said, we went into the mindset, okay, we have what we have. Then we get into full-blown corona mode. And then is when the real insanity begins. Every state decided to start to enforce mandate after it was declared as a national emergency, and started to enforce different versions of their own lockdowns in every state. As everybody knows, here in New York, we had probably one of the harshest and the more severe type of lockdowns than we saw in other states. That was a catalyst for a lot of people that were in Manhattan that were already frustrated. It's not cheap to live in the city. It's not as if we're the most affordable place to live on earth. It's an expensive place to live. And when you start cutting down on the things that the city really has to offer, when you can't go to the parks, when you can't go to the museums, when you can't go to the restaurants, when you can't go to the theaters, and et cetera, you can't Broadway. When all that is taken away from you, and then you are not only in a position where you don't have any of these activities to be able to participate in, and then you're put into a lockdown mode where you're basically stuck in an apartment in quarantine for days, then weeks, then months, you start to get, stir crazy. And people that were in the city started to realize that they wanted a yard. They wanted to have a little more space. If you're going to be stuck in lockdown or quarantine mode, if you could go to your backyard and have, a little bit of fresh air and maybe barbecue or whatever the case is, It's a lot better than being stuck into a 300 square foot unit for indefinite amount of time. So the escape from New York mentality kicked into full gear, and it was real. It was real. California had their own issues from their end, but here in New York, we were living it ourselves in a different way. And people wanted to get out of the major metro congested areas in the city, and they decided that they're going to look for alternatives. So the renters that didn't have anything tying them down, the tenants, especially the ones that their leases were coming up or they were up already, decided to say, you know what, now's the time. Now's the time to buy. So where they're looking in Long Island, they're looking upstate, they're looking the suburbs, they're looking out of state. Can't tell you how many people left the state. But when that happened, you had a good amount of people that were swallowing up the entire inventory that existed at that point. And as I mentioned before, we already had a low inventory to start with because we were in the winter season and we didn't get a chance to catch up. On top of that, you had sellers having a problem now putting their house on the market that they previously would have had putting in the market. Because here's the situation. A lot of sellers that were ready to go or they had their market on previously either pulled their homes off the market or decided they're going to hold off. Why? Because they're thinking to themselves, if I sell right now, where am I going to go? Some of them have a plan. Some of them had a plan to move out of state or had another place to move to, whatever the case is. But others had no plan B. Your typical seller plan B plan is we're going to sell this home and either we're going to upsize or we're going to downsize our home. But you have to have options to be able to fill that plan out. Now they didn't have the option because the inventory was not only low, it was depleting on a daily basis. And their options were not really readily available. And not only that, people were getting into massive bidding wars, especially in the sweet spots of the market. Whenever you would go into any specific neighborhood or territory or region, you always have a sweet spot in the market. Now that sweet spot might be $400,000 to $500,000. It might be $600,000 to $700,000. It could be $8 to $1 million. It really depends on the region and the neighborhood. But we were having massive bidding wars in every sweet spot in every market. So this was putting the sellers in a very panicky kind of state, which in return was causing chaos for the buyers because those houses that normally would have been put on the market or had intention of being put on the market by these sellers that are in panic are not putting their houses on the market. Therefore, the buyers that are already rabid to start with and wanted to purchase anything they could possibly find that's within reason didn't have that. So they were FOMO. There you go. That's the best word. Let's use what the common words and what everybody's saying these days. FOMO. It was all FOMO mentality. So what happened? We went through the whole entire season. And as inventory was coming out, it was getting wiped out. As it was going in, it was going out. And we never got a chance to level ourselves out. And we never got a chance to kind of give us that opportunity to find an equilibrium. Which brings us to today. We still haven't achieved that equilibrium. Because, one, we're still behind. We are still definitely behind. And at the same time, we're still in winter. Yes, the season just started, but we still had that winter mentality going on, and we didn't have that great of a winter that we had last year. We had some snow that held people back. I could tell you from my own experience, we have multiple listings that had held back to be put on the market for the sheer reason that we were buried in snow and we didn't have the ability to be able to take decent photos of the place, because the last thing you want to do is take photos of a place that is buried in snow and not let it necessarily have the greatest opportunity to be seen the way it should be seen. Looks like one of my team members is on the chat today, Mark Handler. Thank you for the endorsement on the topic tonight. I guess you got sick of me going nuts about landlord-tenant rights and happy that I switched gears today. I might get into that by the end of the show, but I'm not sure yet. We gotta attack all the subjects in the best possible way. But that being said, it's a situation where right now we don't know how this market is going to balance. And I could tell you something just out of my own foresight and my own experience of how I seen this thing level out. We're not going to find that balance for the next couple of months. We're still going to be paying catch up. And it's going to take us a little bit of time to really get ourselves somehow adjusted and knowing where we stand, because a lot of things are up out in the air right now, and you have a lot of theory and you have a lot of people pulling out those crystal balls and giving their predictions. And I'll tell you something, anybody that's giving you predictions knows nothing more than the other person giving you the predictions. Yes, we're all giving you educated opinions and off of our experience and what we're seeing on the real day feel, like what I'm doing right now. But we can't give you a definitive idea of what is ultimately going to happen, because it's not possible. We're in a state of a market that we've never been in any other time. Now, in some states, it's not necessarily the same. And you have to be looking at every state on an individual basis, along with the national type of consensus. Because one of the things that you see a lot of times, people are reading the realtor reports and the MLS reports and the data that comes in on a national basis, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you are really looking at your own region in the right way. If you're just going off the national, it's good to know the national numbers and it's good to follow trends. But at the same time, we need to focus and we need to really understand what our specific region is doing. So we have a situation right now that is really, really interesting. And I don't mean that in a sarcastic way. It really is an interesting thing. And how we adapt and how we go about working this market will reflect the market trends for not only this year up until we hit 2022, but for the next 2 to 3 years minimum. I promise you. It is very difficult to give assurance to buyers, and it's very difficult to give assurance to sellers and help them understand what's going on. Because one, they're reading everything that's being written in papers and different, articles, blogs, and they're listening to everything that's being said in the news. And the problem is all these articles, all these trends, all these data reports that are coming out, all these media reports that you're hearing are not adjusting day by day. They're going off the previous month's records. And this market is moving so quickly that you cannot base yourself only on what happened last month. You have to base yourself on what happened last week, last couple weeks, yesterday. That's how that's how volatile this market is becoming. It's almost like we're dealing with the stock market where everything's shifting on a daily basis, that kind of thing. Not exactly that, but it's almost feeling like that. You see houses set new highs on a daily basis. Then other homes that you expect to sell at certain numbers are not exactly hitting there. You're not exactly sure why this is happening. You have sellers that are putting outrageous prices on their homes with expectations that they're going to get it just because they're going off of the momentum. And that's not necessarily the case. It's not the case. And you've always had those sellers go out there and put a price just because they feel like it. You know, a house is worth $1 million. I'm going to put 1.5 just because I feel like. You think I'm being like over the top? There's a lot of people that do that. And then, by the way, shame on the agents that take on those listings with those grossly overpriced numbers. Because one, you're doing a disservice to your sellers. And two, you're wasting your time and you're doing a disservice to yourself. You really are. Can I make it any more simple than that? I don't know. People are basically media driven. And that's not the greatest approach to take. It really isn't. It really isn't the best approach to take. You have to listen to the professionals that are in the area, the reputable ones. I'm not saying this as endorsement because I'm part of the real estate community and I'm a professional myself. You don't have to listen to me. Take 4 or 5 different opinions from other real estate professionals. Ask them what they're feeling. The actual, true, legitimate professionals in our business, not the ones that just want a listing and will take any price you want to ask. You have to take this seriously right now. We don't know how long this momentum and how long this crazy market that we're living in right now will continue. And if you grossly overprice yourself and you really have a legitimate intention of selling, you're going to hurt yourself extraordinarily down the line. And you have to be careful. Really be careful. You price yourself right, you're going to sell right, you're going to do the best thing for yourself. If you have the mentality, if I sell, I'm going to put it on the market, and if I get my money, I got it. If not, no problem, I'll stay at home. That's a different thing altogether. That's always been the case. You've always had certain sellers like that they put their price because they want it, and they don't legitimately don't care if they sell or not unless they get their price. And if that's the mindset that they're taking to start with, that's great. At least they're honest with themselves, and at least they're being honest with the people trying to help sell their place. And the individuals that decide to work with them makes that decision of whether they want to follow through or not with that venture. But I know I'm speeding through a lot of stuff right now. And, typically I have to speed through a lot of stuff anyway because it's a 1-hour show and there's only so much we could possibly cover in a 1-hour show. But these are important elements. This market right now is going to make or break our real estate. I don't know what you want to call it. Is it a bubble? Is it a plateau? Is it another tier? I'm not sure what the proper word to use for it right now is. But what I will tell you, and I will assure you, excuse me, the buyer sentiment is still there. There's a lot of buyers that got shut out of the market last year that still want to buy. They just need to have the options right now. And if they get those options, they're going to buy them up. Now, what's going to determine of how quickly they buy them up is how many options they have. So if we get an influx of inventory, which we will get an influx of inventory, now is the time. Every single day that passes, every single week that passes, we get more and more and more people coming in that are putting their house on the market. But the problem is the buy to sell ratio hasn't really made we haven't seen a significant dent in this inventory chain. I've said this 100 times. I've probably said it 1,000 times, a million times. It's all about real estate 101, supply and demand. And I truly believe this. In order for our supply to catch up with the demand right now, we need approximately 2.5 listings for every one that sells. So make things easy for you, for people that want to do the math. For every 10 houses that sell on this market, you need to have 25 come back on the market almost simultaneously. And that will bring us to a point where we can somehow find a balance. It will give buyers options, enough options to make at least a correct, educated purchase instead of feeling like they need to be pressured into making a purchase. Now, don't get me wrong. This is great for sellers right now. If you're selling on the market, it's great because you have all the leverage in the world. That's not going to continue. And one of the things, oh, thank you. One of the things that is really, really bothering the buyers is that they don't have the options. They feel like they're being pressured. They're pretty much angry with this market. They really are. Because just imagine you keep putting in bids on houses. You know, you're asking for $500,000 on a house, and you're giving full price, and then you're losing that you're not getting your offer accepted. Meanwhile, you're a really qualified buyer. You have everything you need, but you're not getting that deal because you just had somebody else outbid you by $20,000-$30,000. Sometimes even $40,000-$50,000. This is how crazy things have gone. So you started to be bitter as a buyer. And I promise you, a lot of the buyers that are going to still be around when this market starts to shift a little bit and it starts to turn, they're going to remember that. And they're going to be vindictive to the sellers. Even though the sellers that are on the market at that time had nothing to do with the market that was on before. But that's just how that's how this market goes. It really is. You know, it's nothing that hasn't been seen before as far as the supply and demand concept. But right now, it's amplified, and there's external factors that are playing a major role. Now, as places like New York that we're in right now start to lift all the mandates and New York City goes to some kind of state of normalcy. Don't know what that normal will be, but some kind of state of normalcy where, theaters are open, museums are opening normally again. You have the restaurants start to open, and the restaurant situation is another situation that we're going to get into at another show. That my heart goes to all the restaurant owners and small business owners right now, because they're hurting. They're really, really hurting. I don't know how to put it any simpler, but they're putting it, they're in a bad state, as are landlords. Let me not exclude all the landlords that are out there. But as we start to lift all these mandates and some things start going somewhat normal, the escape from New York mentality is going to somehow slow down, and it's going to be very different than what it have been in previous crises that we had here in New York. For example, if you go back to 2008, 2009, we had the financial crisis. People were losing their homes left and right. People got financially decimated through the markets. They were selling out of, necessity. And, where it always starts is the more leveraged properties. And, when you have $1 million condos that are out there in the city, which are not atypical, you have plenty of them. When you have those kind of things and they're leveraged, 70, 80%, and the market just plummeted, and now you're not 20, 30% in equity, you're at 5% or 10% in deficit, you got a problem. And people are letting go of the houses, selling them, short selling them, getting out of there. You have a lot of the sentiment getting out of the city, but that was something that was corrected within a few years, and the market came roaring again. In 2001, when the Twin Towers were hit, 9/11, and people were escaping the city out of fear. And I'll tell you, there was genuine fear there. There was genuine fear. I lived it. I was in the story at the time, and we felt it. You're looking up in the sky every day, seeing if there's an airplane over you, if that airplane is going to fall. It's a very, very uneasy type of feeling to have. And only the people that lived in the boroughs in the city at that time could truly feel it to that extent. Obviously, the whole country was affected. A lot of people were traumatized by that. But when you saw it, when you saw that smokestack, and this was not only live on TV, you could see it right across the river. Or if you were in the city, you could see it. You could smell what was happening. It caused a genuine fear for everybody, a panic. And even then, when there was a lot of initiatives to protect us in different ways, Homeland Security got fully amped, the cleanup was happening. It was still in our minds, and it's still in the minds of many to this day. Never erase it. But the panic, the escape from New York mentality started to dissipate. People kind of settled in. And the other thing that was very different at that time was, as crazy as it sounds, that crisis unified New Yorkers. New Yorkers found a common ground. There was some intangible type of feeling amongst people, like we're going to get through this all together. We're New Yorkers. We're going to get through this. The difference between that and the 2008, 2009 crisis that we dealt with is this. What we're dealing right now in this pandemic is a invisible type of threat. It's a disease, it's a cold, it's a flu, it's a virus, it's a corona, it's whatever you want to call it, that everybody could be affected by. It's not an airplane that you could see falling in the sky. It's in the air. I could be sitting here, Trevor over there behind the screen. He might be spitting full blown corona at me, and I wouldn't even know it. And the same thing could happen for me. I could be spitting full blown corona at him, and he doesn't know it either. So that is a genuine concern by a lot of people. So when you put people in a very congested environment, especially you put them in big apartment buildings where you have hundreds of people walking in and out, and you got these cramped little corridors, halls, that you're walking past each other, you have that genuine fear. That genuine idea is in your mind. Now, I'm not jumping onto the bandwagon and trying to put more fear into everybody, because I truly am not. But this is a genuine thing that people are feeling. All you have to do is walk the street, talk to 100 New Yorkers, and I guarantee you, although everybody's answer will be a little different, the same mindset will be, do you feel as comfortable as you did? Ask them the question. Do you feel as comfortable as you did walking around in New York City, or walking around the stores, or walking around in your building as you did 2 years ago? And I promise you, they don't. And as long as they feel that way, there'll always be a reason for them wanting to move out. And that's not something that's going to fade in a day or 2 weeks, months. This is going to be something that's prolonged, because people are still getting infected by coronavirus, and they're still they're still dying. Now, top that off with a lot of the things in our situation, as far as the confinement, the way everything got structured, it was not something that just happened and we got to live with it. A lot of the mandates that were put in place by our politicians as they deem fit. Now, were they right as far as the way they approached it? I don't know. Trevor doesn't know. Nobody knows. But there's certain things they could have approached in a different way that wasn't as harsh and didn't exaggerate a lot of the things that we're dealing with right now. It's tough. It's a rough thing. There was a lot of politics playing right now. I'm not even going to get into the whole situation with the seniors. Everybody's well aware of what happened and how many people were affected by Cuomo's decisions. At that point, agree with it, don't they agree with it? I'm not going to get into it. Not today. First of all, there's not enough time in the show. And at the same time, I'm done with the politics. I'm so sick of it. I'm sick with, for me personally, it's all dirty politicians. It really is. Dirty politics. We just got to deal with whatever we're dealing with, and that's it. But you top off the genuine fear that we had. You have those harsh mandates that we're living in. And people are not going to forget that very easily. And the other thing is the cost of living in New York City has been escalating. So the mindset that things are going to level out, yeah, we eventually will level out. People will start getting back in the city, and people are buying in the city right now. Don't get me wrong. Yes, there's a high evacuation, but there's people going in there sniffing in deals, and they're buying. You got investors that are swallowing up buildings right now for pennies on the dollar compared to what they could have gotten before, because you have panic-ridden landlords and landlords that have gotten over-leveraged and are in a really bad situation. And we're dealing with that whole situation right now. It's not easy. It's not easy, and it's not going to go away. So we're going to have a hot season going forward. Sellers are going to keep doing their thing. Buyers, I'm sorry, you're still going to have some frustration. And hopefully by the end of the year, I hope so. I don't know if this is going to happen. We start to level and start 2022 as far as a more balanced market. I don't know if that's going to happen. It might not. It's not in my control. It's not in the control of any individual. But I feel that we have more to come right now of what we're dealing with. And just a note on what I mentioned as far as the investors coming in there and swallowing up properties. And I'm going to make another note as far as the landlords out there. I know I haven't been really active, as active as I have been in this past week and a half or so. And it's just because I've been so overwhelmed with the influx of business that's been coming in that I needed to take care of my clients. And at the same time, I needed to do the best I can to do my job. But I have not forgotten you. And I apologize if you think I have let up. You'll hear a lot more from me. You didn't get the multiple videos the way you normally do out of me, talking about different topics. You'll get them again. I just needed to concentrate on the business coming in because, you know what? Like a landlord like you, I'm not getting rents from a lot of the tenants. I got to get money somewhere to be able to, cover my bills. So I need to make sure that I take care of my clients on the sales way, and I will get back into it with the landlord advocacy sooner than later. You'll be hearing multiple times from me this week, and I might do another live stream just to get into that as well. In addition to that, and to complete my thought, what I was saying is you have a lot of landlords that are in these bad situations. And my heart goes out to them. They don't know what to do. They're about to lose their properties. They're getting no support from the government. This situation that they're in is because of laws that were put in place to benefit others, but to hurt them. I don't know if it was done with purpose, and I don't know if it was done meditated as far as what the after effects would be. But the end result is the laws and the mandates that were put in have been catastrophic for the landlord community and the housing community as well. I'll get more into that, and I'll give a better idea to everybody of where we stand with that soon. But it's heartbreaking. It really is. So you got these investors coming in. They're taking advantage of the pain that's happening. I've said this before. The saying, when there's blood in the street, that's when you buy. Well, they're coming in, and there's lots of blood on the street right now, and a lot of people suffering. And I'm not saying anything against these investors because they didn't create this. They're just coming in because they have reserves right now. They have the ability to be able to purchase some of these places, and they have the ability to be able to support these places with their extra funds and liquidity, and that's why they're doing it. I can't fault somebody for coming in to try to get the best possible deal they can at any time. Whether they're taking advantage of the landlords or not, it's not their fault. They didn't create this. Okay? So this is not me bashing against investors because I'm pro investors, same way I'm pro landlords. That landlords were investors. So I'm going to read one comment before we get kicked off the show. I wonder if Cuomo AOC. This is from Driver's Seat on YouTube chat. I wonder if Cuomo AOC or De Blasio read yesterday's New York Post story of the homeless landlord. She has a deadbeat tenant that bought a car during the pandemic. Driver's Seat, I will tell you something. This is not an isolated story. There's so many stories like that as far as landlords being victimized. And I could tell you something. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not. This is how I feel. Cuomo, AOC, de Blasio, and all these politicians out there made it very clear and they made it very apparent that they could care less about us. They could care less about the ramifications that comes from their mandates. They could care less of how much they hurt us. And I'll tell you something, Cuomo could care less about anything right now other than saving his butt. I'm allowed to say butt, right? All right. We don't want an FCC on us. But that being said, I'm going to thank everybody for listening to the show today. Sorry we had a delayed start, but it happens. Have a great week in real estate. Make lots of money in real estate. And just like every single week, I'll be back next week, Monday, 6 to 7 p.m. with the Real Estate Plate. Have a great week. God bless.